Steelers Nation, it's not often that one player, one name, can stop an entire fanbase in its tracks. But last week, that's exactly what happened. One alert on your phone, one headline across the bottom of ESPN, and suddenly everything else, work, errands, whatever you were doing, didn't matter anymore. The Pittsburgh Steelers had just pulled the trigger on one of the boldest moves in recent franchise history. Jalen Ramsey, 7-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, Super Bowl champion, was officially a member of the black and gold. The moment the news broke, it didn't feel real. In fact, at first, some fans thought it was a fake account, one of those parody insiders that like to stir chaos. But as the confirmation started rolling in from Schefter, Rappaport, and every credible NFL reporter, the shock turned into something else, a mix of electric excitement and stunned disbelief. This wasn't just a free agent signing or a depth addition. This was a statement dot inside the UPMC Rooney Sports Complex. The atmosphere was equally intense. According to insiders, the final hours before the trade announcement were a whirlwind. The Steelers front office had been playing this one close to the vest for weeks. Quiet phone calls, late-night meetings, coaches huddled over film, imagining what it would look like to have a true shutdown corner on one side of the field again. And through it all, they had to keep it secret, knowing full well that if word leaked early, rival teams could swoop in or the asking price could skyrocket. But the deal got done, and it wasn't cheap. Pittsburgh gave up assets that could have been used to plug other holes, draft picks, cap space, maybe even a rotational player that fans had grown to like. It was a calculated gamble. Ramsey's talent is unquestionable, but he's 30 now, with miles on his legs and the wear and tear that comes from playing the most physically demanding position in the league. There were whispers about whether he was still at his peak, questions about whether the Steelers were paying for the Ramsey of 2017 to 2020, or the Ramsey of right now. And yet, when you look at the resume, it's hard to bet against him. Jalen Ramsey has spent his career making life miserable for some of the best receivers in the game. He's gone toe-to-toe with the likes of Adrian Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Stefon Diggs, and come out on top more often than not. He's a corner who can lock down an entire side of the field, freeing up the rest of the defense to play more aggressively. That's the kind of player defensive coordinators dream about. The city reacted like you'd expect. Within hours, shops in the Strip District were printing Ramsey shirts in black and gold. Sports radio couldn't take calls fast enough. Some fans calling in to declare the move the steal of the decade. Others cautiously pointing out that the AFC North is not exactly kind of flashy cornerbacks. You don't get to hide out here. You face physical, grind you down offenses in Baltimore and Cleveland, and quarterbacks in Cincinnati who can make you pay for a single misstep dot over on social media. The reaction was a mix of celebration and smack talk. Steelers fans flooded timelines with highlight reels of Ramsey's biggest plays. The pick sixes, the end zone breakups, the bone-crushing tackles that made receivers think twice about going over the middle. Ravens and Bengals fans, on the other hand, wasted no time digging up clips of the few times Ramsey got beat, insisting that his best days are behind him. The rivalry fire was already crackling, and Ramsey hadn't even suited up yet. In the first 24 hours, one thing became clear. No matter which side of the debate you were on, you were talking about it. And that's what Blockbuster moves do. They change the conversation. They make the rest of the league take notice. Behind the scenes, the Steelers coaching staff was buzzing. Mike Tomlin, never one to show too much emotion in public, was reportedly grinning ear to ear in private. He knows exactly what a player like Ramsey can do for his defense. You can scheme differently when you trust your corner to handle one-on-one coverage. Against an elite wideout, you can send more blitzes, take more risks, and force offenses into mistakes. And with the Steelers' already fierce front seven, that combination could be lethal. But there's a flip side to every headline-grabbing move, and this one is no exception. There are questions that need answers, and quickly. Can Ramsey stay healthy for a full season? Can he adapt to the physical grind of AFC North football? Will his presence in the locker room be the spark that ignites a championship run? Or will the pressure of expectations weigh too heavily? That uncertainty is part of what makes this move so fascinating for every fan who's convinced Ramsey will lock down his side of the field and bring swagger back to the Steelers' secondary. There's another who worries that we're buying the name, not the production. And that tension, that constant back and forth between hope and caution, is what will define the conversation until Ramsey steps onto the field. It shows exactly what he can do. For now, all we have is the anticipation, the training camp glimpses, the first photos of Ramsey in Steelers gear, the imagined scenarios of him blanketing Jamar Chase on a critical third down, or baiting Lamar Jackson into a game-changing interception. Those images are enough to make even the most skeptical fan feel a jolt of excitement. Because here's the thing about a move like this. It's not just about stats or cap hits or even wins and losses. It's about belief. It's about sending a message to the locker room, the fan base, and the rest of the NFL that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not playing it safe. They're not settling. They're going for it. And as the dust settled after those first dizzying hours, one question remained, a question that would fuel every debate, every talk show, every pregame conversation from now until January. Is this the greatest cornerback signing the Steelers have ever made, or a high-profile gamble that could come back to haunt them? The answer, well, that's what Chapter 2 is all about. The first week after Jalen Ramsey's arrival wasn't just a honeymoon phase. It was a full-scale public trial, with the court of Steelers Nation divided right down the middle. On one side were the believers, convinced that the Steelers had just pulled off the single most important offensive move of the past decade. On the other side were the cautious realists, acknowledging Ramsey's pedigree, but hesitant to crown him the GOAT move, until they saw him play it down in black and gold. It's not unusual for a Blockbuster signing to stir debate, but this felt different. This was personal. The believers saw Ramsey as more than just a lockdown corner. They saw him as the embodiment of the Steelers' swagger, the kind of player who could stare down the opposing sideline and make them rethink throwing to his side of the field. The cautious crowd, they were playing the long game. They remembered other high-profile veterans who arrived at Pittsburgh with big names and even bigger expectations, only to fade under the grind of the AFC North schedule. Inside the locker room, though, the energy was impossible to ignore. Ramsey didn't just walk in quietly and find a seat. He made his presence known from the first day. Teammates talked about how he carried himself in drills, always vocal, always pushing the pace. Younger defensive backs gravitated toward him, soaking up advice about footwork, hand placement, and reading a quarterback's eyes. Even the veterans admitted that having Ramsey in the room had sharpened their own game. Mike Tomlin, in typical Tomlin fashion, downplayed the hype in front of the cameras, but made it clear to those inside the building. Ramsey wasn't here to just fill a role. He was here to set a tone. In one of the first defensive meetings after the trade, Ramsey reportedly stood up, looked around the room, and said, "We're not just going to be good. We're going to be the #1 defense in this league. No hesitation, no qualifiers, just a declaration." That statement hit like a lightning bolt. Some players were fired up immediately, pounding the table in agreement. Others stayed quiet, processing the weight of the goal. #1 defense in the NFL. That's not just talk. That's a target you paint on your own back. But that's Ramsey's style. He's never shied away from pressure. If anything, he thrives on it. Analysts outside the building had their own debates. The pro-Ramsey camp pointed to his ability to eliminate half the field. You can't measure how much freedom that gives a defensive coordinator, one ESPN segment said. Breaking down film of Ramsey baiting quarterbacks into bad throws, they argued that pairing him with Pittsburgh's pass rush, T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, and company was a nightmare scenario for opposing offenses. The skeptics countered with hard facts. Ramsey's coming off seasons where he's battled through injuries. He's no longer in his mid-20s. Cornerback is a position where speed, reaction time, and explosiveness can dip suddenly. The question isn't if Ramsey can still play, one AFC North beat writer posted. The question is whether he can still dominate for 17 games, plus the playoffs, against the most physical competition in football. And then came the twist that poured fuel on both sides of the debate. An anonymous NFC scout, a guy who's watched Ramsey since his college days, told a Pittsburgh radio show that Ramsey had privately told people he wanted to finish his career in Pittsburgh, that this move wasn't a pit stop, that he saw this as a long-term fit, maybe even a legacy chapter. For the believers, this was gold, commitment, loyalty. The idea of Ramsey mentoring a new generation of Steelers DBS and retiring as one of them, that's goosebump material. For the cautious camp, it was an eyebrow raiser. Legacy talk is great, but what matters is whether the performance matches the paycheck in the short term. Meanwhile, in training camp, The first on-field glimpses of Ramsey in black and gold were enough to make the highlight reels. One rep in particular, matched up against George Pickens in a one-on-one drill, had fans and analysts buzzing. Pickens ran a sharp comeback route, one he's used to cooking DBS on. Ramsey read it perfectly, jumped the pass, and took it the other way. Even the offensive players watching from the sideline had to shake their heads and smile. It was vintage Ramsey, reading the play like he had the quarterback's headset in his ear. By the time the preseason rolled around, the debate had shifted slightly. The believers were louder, the skeptics quieter, but still there. And that's the magic of a move like this. It keeps everyone talking, watching, waiting. Every snap Ramsey takes this season will be under the microscope. Every pass thrown his way will be dissected. Every hit he delivers will be replayed in slow motion on highlight shows. Because when you bring in a player with this kind of pedigree, the expectations aren't just high, they're sky high. And the beauty and danger of high expectations is that they can either turn into the most glorious moments of a season or the most painful. If Ramsey locks down receivers, if he helps lead the Steelers' defense to the top of the league, if he makes those game-changing plays in the fourth quarter with the season on the line, then yes, this will be remembered as the GOAT cornerback move in Steelers history. Fans will talk about it for decades. Kids will wear his jersey long after he retires. His name will be mentioned in the same breath as the legends of the Steel Curtain. But if it goes the other way, if injuries creep in, if his performance dips, if opposing receivers start finding success against him, then the conversation will turn fast. And the same fans who were celebrating in the Strip District will be questioning whether the front office paid for the past instead of the present. That's the razor's edge this move walks, and that's why it's so compelling. For now, Steelers Nation is holding its breath, watching, waiting, believing, or cautiously hoping. And somewhere, behind that trademark visor and confident smile, Jalen Ramsey is preparing for the moment he can answer the only question that really matters. Not if he was a great signing, not if he was worth the cost, but whether he can turn this gamble into the kind of move that wins championships. And if he does, then the debate will be over, and GOAT CB move won't be a question anymore. It'll be a fact carved into Steelers history.